The characters in the Amazing World of Gumball are all unhinged, but somehow, some are fan favorites while others are absolutely despised for being annoying, creepy, or just plain awful. So let's rank the most loved and most hated characters in Gumball, starting with none other than Gumball Waterson. Gumball Waterson is the human, or feline, embodiment of chaos, and that's exactly why fans love him. Unlike most cartoon protagonists who learn from their mistakes and grow as people, Gumball just doubles down on the insanity and somehow makes it work. He's the type of character who would rather fight the laws of reality than admit he was wrong. And honestly, that's kind of impressive. One of the best things about Gumball, he's an absolute menace with words. This dude doesn't just roast people, he verbally obliterates them into another dimension. His insults are so devastating that they've left characters in full-blown existential crises. Like, how do you come back from this? Hey Tobias, you want to hear a joke? Oh wait, you are the joke. But beyond the savagery, what really makes Gumball stand out is his level of self-awareness. Most characters in the show go along with the madness, but Gumball, he knows. He knows he's in a cartoon, knows his life makes no sense, and sometimes he straight up argues with the writers. This dude is breaking the fourth wall so often, he might as well start charging rent. And then, there's his ability to commit to the bit. Whether he's singing opera in a life or death situation, starting a cult over a dumb school rule, or trying to fight destiny itself, he goes all in. No hesitation, no second guessing, just pure, reckless determination. At the end of the day, Gumball is equal parts disaster and genius, and that's exactly what makes him so fun to watch. He's got the mind of a supervillain, the logic of a goldfish, and the confidence of a man who's never faced consequences. And somehow, it works. If Gumball is all about chaos, Darwin is the one trying to keep things under control. Well, most of the time. He's pretty much the only one in Elmore with a conscience, and even though he's surrounded by crazy people, he still believes in doing the right thing. Fans love Darwin because he's kind, loyal, and always tries to see the good in others, even when they don't deserve it. And let's not forget, he started out as a pet goldfish and somehow turned into a smart, emotional, and fully capable person. That alone is one of the biggest glow-ups in cartoon history. He didn't just grow legs, he grew wisdom. Darwin is like Gumball's emotional support animal, except instead of keeping him out of trouble, he just helps him cause more in the nicest way possible. But even though Darwin is usually the responsible one, he has his wild moments too. After all, he's a Waterson, so sometimes his brain just shuts off. Like that time he and Gumball accidentally broke reality and decided the best way to fix it was to make things even worse until the universe gave up. And let's be real, Darwin might be sweet, but he can fight when he needs to. Remember when he completely wrecked Tobias for trying to steal his girl? The whole fandom cheered. So yeah, he's not just nice, he's got some bite too. That's what makes Darwin so great. He's kind without being boring, chaotic without being a total mess, and just weird enough to fit right in with Elmore. Whether he's giving heartfelt advice, randomly singing, or absolutely destroying someone in a fight, Darwin always manages to be one of the best parts of the show. But for all the chaos Darwin puts up with, there's one person who might just handle it even better. She doesn't just deal with Gumball's nonsense, she challenges it. And when she finally revealed her true self, she proved she was way more than just a love interest. Penny Fitzgerald started off as the typical love interest, kind, quiet, and not much else. But as the show went on, she grew from just Gumball's crush into one of the most interesting characters. And everything changed when she literally broke out of her shell. That moment turned Penny from a background character into a total powerhouse. She's kind, loyal, and has way more depth than she first seemed. But let's be real, the biggest reason she stands out? Her powers are incredible. She can shapeshift into anything, making her one of the strongest fighters in Elmore, and she doesn't even need a reason to throw hands. And let's talk about how she actually balances out Gumball's chaos. While most people either encourage his nonsense, Darwin, or just give up entirely, literally everyone else, Penny is the one who keeps him in check. When Gumball is about to self-destruct for no reason, she knows how to talk him down without making him feel dumb about it. That being said, do not get on her bad side. She's one of those people who are so nice that when they finally snap, it's terrifying. Like that time she almost burned down an entire forest just because she was mad at Gumball. Yeah, don't mess with Penny. She proves that a love interest doesn't have to be boring. She can be powerful, emotional, and just as unpredictable as the main character. That's exactly what makes her one of the best characters in the show. But if Penny is the one keeping Gumball grounded, then there's someone else who takes a completely different approach. She doesn't just deal with the chaos. She floats right through it, completely unfazed. With a permanent deadpan stare and the ability to phase through walls, she might just be the coolest character in all of Elmore. Carrie Krueger proves that being dead doesn't mean you can't be cool. In a town full of chaotic weirdos, she somehow stays effortlessly chill, floating through life, literally, with an attitude that says, yeah, I've seen some things and I'm over it. She's sarcastic, deadpan, and completely unbothered, which makes her the perfect contrast to Gumball and Darwin, who have the emotional stability of a wet paper towel. And speaking of Darwin, their relationship is peak cartoon romance. Carrie acts like she's too cool to care, but the second Darwin does something sweet, she completely melts. It's the perfect mix of grumpy and sunshine, except in this case, the sunshine is a hyperactive fish in sneakers. And let's not forget, Carrie is a ghost, which means she has the best party tricks in Elmore. She can phase through walls, possess people, and casually break the laws of physics like it's nothing. When everyone else is freaking out over some ridiculous disaster, Carrie just floats in like, wow, that's crazy. Anyway, she's the closest thing this show has to a goth icon, and she barely even tries. But what really makes Carrie stand out? She's got layers. Underneath all the sarcasm and eye rolls, she actually cares about her friends. She just refuses to be obvious about it. She'll roast you one second, then save your life the next. But good luck getting her to admit she did it on purpose. Bottom line, Carrie is cool without trying, funny without forcing it, and somehow makes being a ghost look completely normal. In a town full of insanity, she's the calm in the storm, and that's exactly what makes her such a great character. But while Carrie floats through life with effortless cool, there's someone else in Elmore who seems to exist in his own universe entirely. He's not just a teacher, he's a philosopher, a performer, and maybe even a little bit of a mad scientist. And once he starts talking, you never know if you're about to hear pure wisdom or total nonsense. Mr. Small isn't just a teacher, he's a walking conspiracy theory in human form. If a 1970s hippie, a yoga instructor, and an environmental activist combined into one person, you'd get him. Fans love him because he's not just a teacher, he's an experience. Every time he speaks, you're either getting deep wisdom or complete nonsense, and there's no way to predict which one. One second, he's telling students to embrace the universe's energy, and the next, he's ranting about microwaves brainwashing people into obedience. He's so deep in his own world that sometimes it feels like he's forgotten he even works at a school. And the way he moves? This man doesn't just walk, he flows. He doesn't just talk, he performs. Everything about him is over the top, exaggerated, and dramatic, which somehow makes even the simplest lesson feel like a TED Talk on the meaning of life. Watching him try to function in reality is like watching someone who had too much herbal tea and forgot how society works. But here's the thing, for all his weirdness, Mr. Small actually cares. Sure, his advice doesn't always make sense, and sometimes he's so focused on spiritual harmony that he forgets how to function. But at the end of the day, he truly wants his students to live better lives. And that's why people love him. He's weird, dramatic, and completely detached from normal human behavior, but somehow that's exactly what makes him one of Elmore's best teachers. But if Mr. Small is the kind of teacher who's too lost in his own world to function, there's another teacher in Elmore who is the exact opposite. She's not here to inspire, enlighten, or help anyone. She's here to make life miserable. And if you think that's an exaggeration, just wait until you see how far she'll go to ruin one kid's life. Miss Simian is the absolute worst. If you've ever had a teacher who hated kids for no reason, she's that, but 10 times worse and somehow even older. She's been teaching for 2,000 years, yet the only thing keeping her going is ruining Gumball's academic career. You'd think, after witnessing entire civilizations rise and fall, she'd find a new hobby, but nope. She's out here failing students just for fun. And she's not even subtle about it. Some teachers at least pretend to be fair, but Miss Simian, she doesn't bother. She straight up despises Gumball and will sabotage him at every turn. If he aces a test, she'll find a loophole. If he does nothing wrong, she'll make something up. One time, he was helping an old lady cross the street, and somehow that still got him in trouble. I knew you were up to something, Waterson. Like, what? The level of pettiness is unmatched. She's so determined to see him fail, she'll even sabotage herself in the process. At this point, she's a full-on cartoon villain, except there's no tragic backstory, just pure spite. And just when you think she couldn't get any worse, she starts flirting with Principal Brown, and suddenly, the entire fandom collectively vomits. First of all, why? Second of all, why? The flirting scenes are painful, and the worst part? She actually has power over him. This isn't just an awkward office romance, it's straight-up workplace corruption. So to summarize, terrible teacher, enjoys ruining kids' lives, possibly immortal but only uses that power for evil. Her relationship with Principal Brown is a war crime. Honestly, if she was just bad at teaching, maybe people would let it slide. But she's so much worse. Miss Simian doesn't just fail students. She actively wants them to suffer. And for what? Her own amusement? Yeah, automatic villain status. But as much as Miss Simian is hated for being pure evil, there's another character who gets a completely different kind of hate. She's not a villain, she's not a menace. She's just weird. So weird, in fact, that half the fandom still isn't sure if she was a mistake or an intentional prank by the writers. Sussy is indescribable. Seriously. She isn't hated in the same way as Miss Simian or Tobias. She's just so bizarre that fans don't even know what to do with her. Every time she's on screen, it feels like the animators just gave up on logic and said, yeah, let's make a character that exists purely to make people uncomfortable. Her voice? Haunting. Her face? A cursed image brought to life. Her humor? Borderline nonsense. And that's the thing. She's not even evil, she's just confusing. Every other hated character at least has a purpose. Miss Simian exists to be Gumball's nemesis. Tobias is an annoying tryhard. But Sussy? What even is she? A puppet? A fever dream? The physical manifestation of chaos? No one knows. And honestly, no one wants to know. What makes it worse is that she somehow has more screen time than characters who actually matter. Why? Who decided this? Who walked into the writer's room and said, you know who needs more episodes? The sentient potato sack with teeth. And the writers clearly love her. They treat her like a comedic genius, but most people, yeah, they're not laughing. If she was just a weird one-off background character, she might have been harmless, but no, they kept bringing her back. And every time she showed up, it was more absurd than before. At this point, her entire existence just feels like a massive inside joke that the audience was never let in on. And that's why so many viewers can't stand her. It's not even rage-inducing hate. It's more like a, why are you still here type of frustration. But while Sussy's weirdness feels like a prank on the audience, this guy is hated for a much more straightforward reason. He never stops trying to be cool. The problem? The harder he tries, the worse it gets. Tobias Wilson is what happens when you take inflated self-confidence, zero self-awareness, and pure second-hand embarrassment and mix them into one character. He's desperate for attention, thinks he's the coolest guy in school, and somehow believes everyone else agrees. Spoiler alert, no one does. And the worst part? He never stops trying. Tobias has main character syndrome to the max, always acting like he's the most athletic, attractive, and interesting person in Elmore, when in reality, he's none of those things. He's the kid who flexes in the mirror at the gym, but forgets to actually work out. He's the type to drop his life savings on sneakers just to impress people who don't care. And let's be honest, Tobias stays taking L's in the most humiliating ways possible. He tried to flex his muscles, only to get bodied by Darwin of all people. He tried to steal Penny from Gumball, and instead of being smooth, he got publicly humiliated. He literally paid to be Gumball's friend, and somehow still got clowned for it. This dude's entire personality is built around trying to be cool, but the harder he tries, the worse it gets. He's like a walking TikTok alpha male course, thinking he's pulling off the ultimate flex, when in reality, he's just annoying everyone around him. And somehow, despite all this, he never learns. You'd think after getting roasted in almost every episode, he'd take a hint, but nope. Tobias just keeps coming back, louder, flashier, and more obnoxious than before. At this point, the only thing Tobias has ever truly succeeded at is being the most embarrassing person in Elmore. But if Tobias is annoying because he never stops trying to be cool, this guy is on a whole different level of awful. He doesn't just make people uncomfortable, he actively destroys them. And the worst part? He does it all with a smile, like he actually enjoys watching people fall apart. There's manipulative, and then there's whatever level of villainy Mr. Cree operates on. In a show filled with weird, chaotic, and sometimes downright evil characters, this guy still manages to stand out as one of the most genuinely sinister people in Elmore. Because let's be real, he's not just a bad therapist, he's a full-blown cartoon supervillain. Most therapists try to help their patients work through their problems. Mr. Cree, he creates problems out of thin air. His entire goal wasn't to help Gumball and Darwin, it was to break their family apart for his own twisted amusement. Who does that? Imagine going to therapy expecting life advice, and instead, you get gaslit into believing your entire family is toxic. And the worst part? He was good at it. This dude manipulated Gumball and Darwin so well that they were ready to cut ties with their entire family. That's next-level psychological warfare. He didn't even have to lie, he just twisted their reality so much that they started seeing problems that weren't even there. That's some horror movie villain behavior right there. And for what? For fun. There was no master plan, no revenge plot. He just did it because he could. That's what makes him scarier than some of the show's actual villains. Rob wanted to escape the void. The Watchtower wanted to control Elmore. But Mr. Cree, he just wanted to ruin a family's life for no reason. So yeah, automatic villain status. Most bad therapists give you generic advice and overcharge you. This guy tried to tear a family apart for sport. Forget evil therapist. He might just be one of the most devious characters in Gumball, period. But if Mr. Cree was terrifying because he manipulated people for fun, this one is on a whole different level of awful. It's one thing to be absent. It's another to walk back into someone's life just to take advantage of them. And somehow, that's not even the worst part. There are bad dads. And then there's Frankie Waterson, a man who somehow managed to be so absent, so irresponsible, and so shameless that even in a town as unhinged as Elmore, he still stands out as one of the worst fathers of all time. Let's just start with the bare minimum expectations of fatherhood, which, for Frankie, was already too much. He walked out on his family, left Richard to grow up completely on his own, and then had the audacity to only come back when he needed something. Not to apologize, not to make amends, just to use them. And when I say he abandoned Richard, I don't mean he made mistakes and tried to do better later. I mean he fully disappeared from his child's life and didn't even think twice about it. Richard, who is literally the most emotionally dependent person in Elmore, was left to figure out life by himself because his dad just couldn't be bothered to do the one job he had. And then after years of zero contact, he magically shows up again like nothing happened, as if the past was just a little oopsie. But here's the worst part. He didn't come back to reconnect. He came back to scam them. Imagine abandoning your child and then returning just to rob them. That's not just deadbeat behavior. That's full-on cartoon villain territory. And when the family actually gave him a chance, because they're somehow better people than he deserves, what does he do? Runs off again. The man is all take, no give, and somehow he still manages to act like it's not his fault. At this point, he's not even a bad dad. He's just a random guy who happened to donate DNA to Richard. Even Elmore's actual villains have better family values than this man. Frankie Waterson didn't just fail at being a dad, he failed at being a decent human being. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you at the next one.